What's up everyone, welcome to Drummer's Perspective. My name is Ben Todd and I'm here to help broaden your scope of what's possible as a drummer. Thank you so much for checking out the video today. If you are new to the channel though, please subscribe, that really does help me out. Now today I'm super excited to bring you the very first video from my home studio. You'll notice the environment probably looks a little bit different to the previous videos that I've been putting out, and that's because I've recently come off the road of touring with Cirque du Soleil for around 14 years, but now I'm back home in Australia and I'm really excited to be able to bring you a whole bunch of new content from this amazing workspace that I'm so fortunate enough to have at my place. So for this first video, I thought it'd be interesting to share with you a bit of a step-by-step process of how I approach recording drum tracks for people from my home studio. And this is something that I'm going to be doing quite a lot of now that I'm back home again, and something that I did do quite a lot of before I went on the road. But for this particular situation, I've got two tracks to record today from a musician who I've worked with a little bit in the past. And he actually sent me these tracks quite a few months ago, but was gracious enough to be patient until I got back home into my studio to be able to record these for him. So for this kind of thing, there's really no right and wrong way to do it. This is just going to be my approach and how I go about, deciding all of the different areas and topics that it takes to record a drum track for someone from your home studio. There's a lot of different decisions that need to be made, and different choices that you can make, and there's already a lot of information out there online of how different musicians approach recording from home, but this is just my take on it. I thought it would be interesting to share that with you. I'm going to be really listening to these tracks for the very first time and then walking you through the decisions that I make and why I make them, everything from how I write out the charts and why I choose the certain drums I'm going to be choosing, and cymbals and microphones and setup and all of that kind of thing, just to give you a little bit of an insight about how I approach doing something that I really love to do from my home studio. And I know there's a lot of other musicians and drummers out there who enjoy doing this kind of thing as well. So for now, sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy this step-by-step process of how I go about recording drum tracks for musicians from my home studio. Alright, so for today I've got a couple of tracks to record for a musician, composer who I've worked with a couple of times in the past, named Chris, and he writes some really great stuff, and he's recently sent me two new tracks to record. I haven't heard these tracks at all, I've just downloaded the files here. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of walk you through the process of what I do and how I record drums from my home studio here. So the first thing that I do before I start thinking about what equipment I'm going to use and what mic placement I'm going to use and any of that kind of stuff is just listen to the songs, just to get a real nice overall sense of the music, the vibe, the sound he might be going for. I might reference some notes that he's sent through in previous emails to kind of guide me in that direction as well. But yeah, before I kind of start making too many choices and assumptions based off of things of what I might have done in the past for a certain client or artist, I just like to open the files and listen through them. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So yeah, as I said, I've got two tracks to do. One's called Breathe and one's called Look Up to You. So let's take a look here, and it looks like Chris has sent through all of the individual stem tracks, which is great because it allows a little bit more freedom to isolate some parts and listen to the specifics of what instruments might be doing, and that might help guide me in some choices I make with some the parts that I play. But yeah, let's listen through this first one. So it's called Breathe, and it looks like he's put in the file name as well, 120 BPM, 44.1, 24-bit, which is really helpful for setting all of the necessary things that I need to set on the interfaces and recording software and that kind of thing. So let's see. Let's just grab them all and drag them in here. to logic, and we'll go use existing tracks. Boom. There you go. Change project sample rate to 44.1. Yes, change project. Cool. So as mentioned, he said it was at 120, and that's 120 right there. So let's save this right now before we go any further. April drum tracks. Boom. And call this one breathe. Okay, cool. Let's take a listen. Cool. All right, that's a great track. Sounds like I'm already getting some ideas of what drums I might want to use, and some parts that I might want to play just from that initial listen through. But yeah, I will say it's really important. Well, I found it's really important for myself anyway. Before I start jumping into like writing out a chart, or like start to think too deeply about things, I just like to listen to it kind of all the way through, because that helps me kind of get a big, nice overall reference of everything, without being distracted by the details of certain instruments I might want to use and parts I want to play. So the first thing I'll do now, once I've listened through everything, is to write out a simple chart. I find this saves me a lot of time over just trying to memorize the song, and try and get the track done that way. If I have a simple chart, it really just has to be like very basic. That helps to get the process moving a lot quicker, and can turn around these recordings a lot faster. So I will take a listen through again now and write out a quick chart, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so just taking a listen through this tune and written out a very rough chart for myself, which is pretty messy, but over the time of needing to write out drum charts quickly, I've come up with my own little way of doing it, and it's pretty much all there. If I was to give this to someone else, they might have a hard time interpreting it or understanding the legibility of some of the notation, but for me it works really well. So yeah, this is going to, I think, be sufficient to at least get started. From now, what I like to do is start to think about some of the sounds that I might want to use, some of the drums, some of the cymbals, some mic positions, and that kind of thing. So at the moment, my kit is set up just in a practice state, so there's no mics on it at all. It's a bit of a Bitzer throw together kit. There's odd drums put together just for me to have a little setup to practice on. But seeing as this is obviously a tracking session, I'm going to be much more intentional with the drums and cymbals and positions of everything that I choose. So let's jump over to that now and start pulling out some drums and setting some stuff up. All right, so as mentioned, the kit at the moment that I have set up in the studio has just been put together for me as a little practice setup. So there's kind of odd drums put together just to give me something to play on over the last little while. But for these couple of tracks I'm going to do today, I've got some good ideas now about the drums that I want to use and the cymbals that I want to use. So I'm going to tear down this kit pretty much. I might keep a couple of things, but most of all going to replace pretty much everything and get some mics set up, and then we can get into tracking. So let's do it. Alright, so this is pretty much everything I'm going to use from the practice setup that is going to be used on these tracks. It's essentially drums wise, it's just the kick drum and the hardware will stay the same. But this kick is a 22 by 14 old, I think it might be a pearl, I'm not exactly sure, from the 70s. That's kind of been restored and it just sounds awesome in this room. So I'm going to stick with this kick drum. It's a very versatile pop, rock, punchy, tight kind of kick drum sound that I think is going to work well with these couple of tracks today. And everything else I'm going to pull out from the rack and start assembling. So let's keep going. First thing, Ludwig 14 by 6.5 Black Beauty snare. Can't go wrong. Classic staple sound. It's going to work great for these tracks. For the toms, I decided to bring back the 16 that I had in the practice setup. This is a Pearl Masters maple drum, and same for this 12, which is kind of part of my gigging setup that I'm going to throw up as well. So yeah, 12 and a 16. Probably not going to need a double pedal on these tracks, so I'm going to get rid of this just for keeping things nice and clean for when I get the mic stands in. Alright, so now before I go too much further with things, I've kind of positioned the drums how I want them. I'm going to try and get some nice drum sounds tuning wise, and then I'll start pulling the mics in from there. So the last time I used this drum, it was for a pretty deep, dead sounding kind of track with snare drum sound that we're chasing. So there's quite a lot of tape on here. So now I'm trying to tune it a little higher to get a bit more smack out of it. And it's quite dead sounding with all this muffling on there. So I'm going to take it off and kind of start again. Alright, I'm pretty happy with these drum sounds so far. We'll obviously see once we get the mic set up and start doing some test tracking whether they're translating as I want. But for now, I think that's a good starting point. I'm going to pull some cymbals up and then start getting on with the mics. So for the setup, today I'm just going to go with pretty standard ride, 2 crashes and hats. The hats I'm going to try these K fat hats, they're called, prototype fat hats. The crashes, I got a few to try out. I'm not exactly sure which ones I'm going to prefer. And then the ride, I think I'm going to go with a custom 20-inch medium ride. But again, that might change once we start listening through things once it's recorded. But for now, I'll get these up and see how we go. Okay, so these 2 crashes are a 17-inch K Custom dark crash and a 17-inch dark thin crash. Let's see what they sound like. Very similar. I think I prefer this dark thin crash. It's just a little clearer. This one's got a few more like complex tones in it that I don't think are going to work so well for these tracks. So I'm going to keep this one and then try a couple of others for over here. So the first option is this 18-inch K Carope crash. Too bad. Second option is this 18 Avidus crash. to my taste, I prefer the Carope, so I'm going to go with that one for now. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this setup. I'm going to get some mics set up right now. I'll give you a quick rundown as we go. For the mics I'm going to use on the kick in, I'll use this AKG D112, bit of a staple for recording kick drum. And on the kick out, I'm going to use this Neumann TLM 103. And then for snare top and bottom, I'm just going to use 57s. For the hats, I'm going to use this Audix ADX 50. And then for the room mic, I'm going to use this Ribbon mic MXL R40. The tom mics I'm going to get in a second, and overheads as well. I'll pull them up. Okay, for the tom mics, I'm going to use the Sennheiser 421s, kind of again pretty classic staple tom mic, and overheads I'm going to use the Stereo Match Pair C414s. Alright, as we know, very important to get these overhead mics equal distant from the center of the snare, so I'm going to measure that up right now after I get general position of this mic here. I obviously want to get the right hand side of the kit kind of above the ride, and the toms, cymbal, that. That's looking pretty good. It's pretty much spot on. So I think all the mics are in rough positions. I'm going to tweak these and then plug everything in, and then we can start getting some sounds. Alright, just got everything plugged in and got some levels for the drums. Everything's sounding good, everything's nice and clean. I'm happy with the tuning and the drum choice and cymbal choice. So all that's left now is to get into getting some drum tracks, getting some takes. So let's do it. Alright, so I just got done tracking this one. I'm going to take a listen back to that take, but I'm pretty happy with most things, I think. I might just do one more take just for safety and to send off to Chris, just so he's got some options of perhaps some different fills and interpretations of a couple of different things. But on the whole, that's pretty much how I run through the process of getting a drum track from someone and making the choices that I make and writing out the parts and establishing things. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed checking that out today. What I do from here is basically get a rough mix of an overall drum sound that I think sounds good as a reference to send off, and send that along with the stems. And if there are any notes or changes that need to be done, then I can definitely do that. But on the whole, that's pretty much the process. So yeah, thanks again for checking out this video. If you are keen to see some more of this kind of stuff, the next video that I'm going to be working on is how I work on getting a mix for the drums to send off. So please hit that subscribe button and head on over to drummersperspective.com and sign up to the mailing list. I'll see you next time on Drummer's Perspective.